Hi, folks. This is Matt Duvall. I'm currently a candidate for the 102nd Legislative District here in the state of Pennsylvania. I just wanted to give a little intro to these videos I'm going to be doing. Basically, what they are is just conversations with people around different topics of interest. My attempt to gather some different perspectives. So I wanted to say that obviously the opinions expressed in these interviews are only those of the people talking. Um, but in general, I enjoy hearing the perspectives and often learn things I did not know. Along with that, I wanted to encourage you to express your own opinion. I would also encourage you to keep the discourse civil, but I am aware of how social media works. I know that that's not always going to be the case. If anything gets too personal or offensive, I may take it down. Um, if you want to express an opinion contrary to those here and don't feel like you're being heard, reach out to me on duval4pa.com. Send in the contact form. Let me know what topic you'd like to talk about, and I will host one of these video chats with you, and as well as other people who may be interested in the same topic that you are. And all of those questions I provide to these folks ahead of time so that they understand what the conversation is going to be about. And you always have the ability to say you don't want to participate anymore at any point in time. So I hope you enjoy these videos. We're calling them Midday with Matt, which is kind of a take on like Late Night with David Letterman. Even though I am not filming these midday, maybe I will be posting them midday, or you can watch them midday. All right, everybody, enjoy and stay safe. All right, so I'm just going to take a minute and let you both introduce yourselves, and then I'll have some questions for you about what it's like to be married to someone in the military.
Hi, I'm Hannah Gribble. I live in Ellicott City, Maryland, and I'm married to a senior NCO in the Maryland Air National Guard.
I'm Carrie Lee Grady, currently living in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and my husband is stationed at NetWarcom in Portsmouth.
Very cool. So basically, I just wanted to ask some questions about your views as somebody who's close to a person who's in the military, and see what we might learn. We have the Fort Indian Town Gap is here nearby, which is a National Guard training site, and so a number of folks in this area are also military or married to people in the military. One question I had is that I'm sure with that there's kind of stereotypes of military wives and husbands, and so I wanted to get some firsthand what your experience has been as a mil spouse, and also ask if the term mil spouse is like the correct term to use.
It's a fine term, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's better than some of the other slightly more derogatory terms that are out there. In my experience, the cliche is that military wives, because God forbid a spouse be a husband, all are stay-at-home mothers with 2.5 kids, and their lives revolve around their kids. And honestly, to a certain extent, that is the experience with other military spouses that I know. People think that I'm weird because my husband and I are child-free. And so, when my husband worked in munitions, it was with a lot of people who were in the military because they didn't have access to higher education beyond high school. And that was absolutely the experience. And it's been fascinating since he switched to the IT field in the last few years, to people who, even though they're still technically enlisted in the military, have bachelor's and even master's degrees. And all of a sudden, it's a lot more fun to go to parties with other military spouses because now I have people to talk to, because it's not just all the women in the kitchen talking about their kids.
Right.
I'll add on to that. That's generally been my experience. My husband is an officer, so we kind of rolled into it with everybody has a college degree, but that didn't stop the discussions in the kitchen part. And the first 10 years of our marriage, we were actually child-free until, oops, and now we're not. But so I've seen kind of both sides of that. And the child-free experience is really, even getting it from other military spouses, that stereotype persists within our community even. And then another stereotype is that everybody is conservative, and it's really not the case. I used to think that there were just a few of us peppered through, and there are actually quite a few. I've been running into a bunch on social media lately, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because that is, so, you know, I think that is very common that people assume if you are more liberal in your views or, you know, a Democrat, you would never consider like serving in the military. In my experience, it's more diverse than that, than it might seem. But you know, it's definitely interesting. So I guess you know, another question I was interested in hearing is whether you think you know, the American government is doing a good job taking care of its servicemen and women. What might be better? What things do you see as being, you know, strengths?
I think that the intentions are always there. There's always, you know, the good intentions that run up against lack of money, lack of resources. Um,
I have a really good example that kind of sums up the experience for military families, particularly. I know service members get mostly what they need, but again, there are budget concerns all the time on the job and even personally. But one thing that happened about 10, 12 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe 15, they came up with this idea called My CAA, which was supposed to help military spouses find portable careers that could follow them throughout their spouse's career in the military. And it was offering up to, I think it was $6,200. Was really great. And you could use it for anything. You could do it for a degree. I used mine for my master's degree, which was really awesome. That took a good chunk of student loans out anyway. But within, I think maybe a year, when people started hearing about it and using it, all of a sudden the Navy was like, or I guess the whole military was just, oh my God, we can't believe it's so popular. They actually shut it down. And then they had to retool it. And now it's only for junior officer spouses. And I think it's junior. Hannah, do you know if it's junior enlisted too?
I honestly never even heard about the program.
Really?
You mentioned it to me once a few years ago.
Yeah. So it's restricted now, and it's a lot less, and you have to go with very specific career options like dog grooming or hairstylist or massage therapist. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the whole intention was a career. That's not what it ended up being. It ended up being about a job that was portable, but not a career. So that kind of sums up the entire thing for the whole military.
I mean, I know that according to Facebook ads, my only career options as a military spouse are doing makeup for weddings. It's very specific.
Yeah.
So I actually, I was raised as a military brat. My parents were divorced when I was very young and both got remarried when I was very young. So 3 out of my 4 parents were military. And I lived the experience of moving every few years, and I hated it. I was definitely one of those military brats who did not come out of that experience having any positive thoughts about the military. And I swore up and down I was never gonna have anything else to do with the military. And then, of course, I married essentially my dad. But I jokingly tell him all the time that if he'd been active duty, he never would have gotten a second date. And so my experience is very different from Carrie Lee's because my husband has been National Guard at the same base his entire military service since he was 17 years old. And so even just the difference between an active duty spouse and a National Guard or reservist spouse can be very different. And like, I know that Carrie Lee and I have also had conversations about like medical care for families in the military. And I grew up with TRICARE and had some pretty terrible experiences and swore up and down that I was never going to do TRICARE again in my life. And luckily, probably because I can stay in one place, I have a career here in Maryland, and we can use my job's health insurance, which we do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there because it would make sense that it's not like a monolithic experience, but I don't know if that always translates for people who are not in or around the military that much. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess along with some of the, you brought up healthcare during this pandemic. I know Hannah and I were talking a little bit before we started the call, but how's the pandemic affecting your lives and your spouse's lives?
Not at all.
Oh yeah.
Sort of. So I'm lucky enough in my job as a medical editor that I can work from home full time. Because my spouse does IT, a good portion of his job is, making sure the internet on the base runs. So he has to be, he can't work from home full time. The one allowance that they've made, so my spouse is in the National Guard, but he also works on base as a technician full time. So it's a civilian career that he has to be in the military to have. So that's a weird distinction. But the one allowance that they've made is that he and his office mate are splitting the time in the office, and he can work from home the other 2 days a week, which is nice. But we've already had one confirmed instance of COVID-19 going through his office. Unfortunately, they were only able to test one person. A couple other people got sick. A couple of their spouses got sick. We were lucky that we did not, but we have no idea whether we were asymptomatic or not. And we basically have to function as if every time he goes to work, there's a potential exposure.
That is true. We're doing the same right now. They have 3 shifts at Warcom, and my husband spends about 2 weeks at home and then goes into the office for a week. In the office for a week, there's really no difference to us here, except knowing that there's a pretty good possibility he's going to bring it home one day. They did have, I think it was a JAG representative in the office, was diagnosed and got very ill, but I haven't heard of any other cases in the office at this point.
The only other way that it's really been different on the base is their monthly drill weekend was last weekend, and they split it in half. Half the people went in Saturday and the other half went in on Sunday. And for everything else, they did kind of a virtual drill, which was interesting. I know my husband was sitting in the den downstairs with his uniform blouse on and his pajama pants, which was entertaining.
Yeah. There was a clip, I don't know if you saw it, of a news reporter who was doing a story from home and shooting his own video, and included the fact that he was wearing shorts instead of pants with his suit jacket and stuff. Yeah, that's always good. Yeah, I guess so. So the next question I had was about civilians, and if there's anything that civilians do, or any way that they talk to you or treat you that you like, or things they do that you don't like. What I had in mind, I guess, was, I know it's pretty common if you see somebody in a military uniform that people will go up and say, like, thank you for your service, which is, again, like Hannah was talking about, I think that's always done with a good intention. For myself, I sometimes feel a little odd about it because I know some of my friends who have been in the military, um, that bothers them for a variety of different reasons. So I don't want to be, ungrateful, but I also don't know, sometimes what the effect of something like that is. So anything like that, or other examples that are not like that at all that you have, I think would be interesting to hear about.
Well, there's always the joke that just because my husband's in the Air Force, obviously he's a pilot. He is definitely not a pilot. I literally had that conversation with somebody the other day.
Right.
Yeah, spouses, we also get thanked for our service sometimes, and it's super awkward
Yeah.
because we kind of referred a little bit at the beginning of this conversation to some of the nastier words used for military spouses, and there is one that is bandied about a lot when a military spouse claims to also be serving. And it kind of has developed into a sore spot, I think. So that makes it a little worse. But at the same time, I think also it's, for us, it ends up being a little trite because you have no idea as a civilian what it's like to be a military spouse. You don't know the sacrifices that we make daily. And so it kind of feels like, oh, thank you. I know best intentions and all, but it just kind of drives that whole military civilian divide concept even wider in your mind. Another thing that I really don't like, and it's not to us, but it's about us when we're used as political footballs.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you know, another question I had that I think would fit in here is just, beyond just being sort of, used as props in a lot of ways politically, and even, you know like, there's emotional videos that go around of, reunions or surprise reunions. But in reality, like, how much does a shift in either, like, the local elections or the national elections affect your day-to-day reality?
It's almost kind of a joke in my household that whenever stuff about some Middle Eastern country comes up, I'll be like, oh, looks like you're going there next year.
um, I'm sorry, my brain just stopped. I was going for coffee here.
So one of the things that my husband and his circle have started doing is if somebody says thank you for your service, they just respond, thank you for your support. That's literally, it's just kind of a cultural exchange now that is again, the good intentions are there, but it's become almost meaningless. Sometimes they'll be out for lunch and they'll get lunch paid for, which is nice, but again, totally not necessary. I wish people would, this is what you're here for. And I wish that people would vote with those same good intentions instead of just, paying lip service, because sacrifices are made, some are big, some are small.
That assumption again that we're all Republicans and that the Republican Party actually has any good intentions toward us whatsoever. We're more often the political football.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish they would vote actually looking at the facts. Who does consider the budget that's required not just to run the military, but to take care of the people too. As far as like local politics, because we move all the time, I took advantage of the Military Spouse Relief Act and made my home of record Arkansas, where my husband is from. So our taxes are so much easier now. And I don't have to get a new driver's license every time we move, et cetera. But I'm more involved in the local politics of Arkansas, even though I live in Virginia. And it's weird because the Virginia laws are the ones that are actually going to affect me more generally speaking. So it's this, I don't know, I show support where I can locally, but there's not a lot that I can do. I can't vote for anything that's going on here. But I don't know, I wish there was a way that we could split that up somehow, but I don't think that's even possible.
Right.
So, obviously we live here in Maryland. You know, it's a fairly military and government employee heavy area. My husband's base is Warfield, which is just north of Baltimore, but we live very close to Fort Meade. There's a lot of military and government around here. So, and we live in a fairly blue area, which is nice on my end. So I don't pay as much attention to local politics because I don't have Matt's situation where, he feels like his views are not being represented. So I will admit that I pay more attention to state and national politics than I do local politics.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that was pretty much the list of questions I had. So I just wanted to give you both the floor to talk about anything else that you wanted to mention or that you felt like would be interesting.
Well, just, if anybody who watches this takes one thing away, just what you mentioned earlier, that being a military spouse is not a monolith. I'm good friends with husbands who are spouses. I'm friends with same-sex partners who are spouses. And some of us have kids, some of us don't. And there's multiple reasons for all of that.
Cool.
Vote for Matt.
Definitely vote for Matt.
All right. Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks again for the time, and we'll be in touch, and I really appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Good luck.
Thank you very much.